Part 1, Assessing the Power of Now. Chapter 1, Being an Enlightenment. Chapter 2, The Origin of Fear. Chapter 3, Entering the Now. Chapter 4, Dissolving Unconsciousness. Chapter 5, Beauty Arises in the Stillness of Your Presence. Chapter 1, Being an Enlightenment. When your consciousness is directed outward, mind and world arise. When it is directed inward, it realizes its own source and return home into the unmanifested. There is an eternal, ever present, one life beyond the myriad forms of life that are subject to birth and death. Many people use the word God to describe it. I often call it being. The word being explains nothing, but nor does God. Being, however, has the disadvantage that it is an open concept. It does not reduce the infinite, invisible to a finite eternity. It is impossible to form a mental image of it. Nobody can claim exclusive possession of being. It is very presence. It is your very presence, and it is immediately accessible to you as the feeling of your own presence. So, it is only a small step from the word being to the experience of being. Being is not only beyond but also deep within every form as its innermost, invisible, and indestructible essence. This mean this means that it is accessible to you now as your own deepest self, your true nature. But don't seek to grasp it with your mind. Don't try to understand it. You can know it only when the mind is still, when you are present, when your attention is fully and intensely in the now. Being can be felt, but it can be never understood mentally. To regain awareness of being and to abide in that state of feeling realization is enlightenment. The word enlightenment conjures up the idea of some superhuman accomplishment, and the ego likes to keep it that way. But it is simply your natural state of fat oneness with being. It is a state of connectedness with something immeasurable and indestructible, something that almost paradoxically it is essentially you and yet much greater than you. It is finding your true nature beyond name and form. The inability to feel this connectedness gives rise to the illusion of separation from yourself and from the world around you. You then perceive yourself consciously or unconsciously as an isolated fragment. Fear arises and conflicts within and without become the norm. The greatest obstacle to experience the reality of your connectedness in is identification with your mind, which cause thought to become compulsive. Not to able to stop thinking is a dreadful affliction, but we don't realize this because almost everybody is suffering from it. So it is considered normal. This as incessant mental noise prevent you from finding that realm of inner stillness that is inseparable from being. It, it also creates a false mind made self that casts a shadow of fear and suffering. Identification with mind creates an opaque screen of concepts, label, image, words, judgments, and definitions that blocks all true relationship. It comes between you and yourself, between you and your fellow man and woman, between you and your nature, between you and God. It is this screen of thought that creates the illusion of separationness, the illusion that there is you and a totally separate other. You then forget to essential fact that underneath the level of physical appearances and separate forms, you are one with all that is. The mind is a superb instrument if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. To put it more accurately, it is not so much that you use your mind wrongly. You usually don't use it at all. It uses you. This is the disease. You believe that you are your mind. This is the delusion. The instrument has taken you over. It's almost as if you were paused without knowing it. And so you take the processing entity to be yourself. The beginning of freedom is the realization that you are not the possessing entity, the thinker. Knowing this enable you to observe the entity. The moment you start watching the thinker, a high level of consciousness become activated. You then begin to realize that there is a vast realm of intelligence beyond thought. That thought is only a teeny aspect of that intelligence. You also realize that all the things that truly matter beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace arises from beyond the mind. You begin to awaken, freeing yourself from your mind. The good news is that you can free yourself from your mind. This is the only true liberation. You can take the first step right now. Start listening to the voice in your head as often as you can. Pay particular attention to any repetitive thoughts pattern. Those old audio tapes that have been playing in your head perhaps for many years. This is what I mean by watching the thinkers, which is another way of saying listen to the voice in your head. Be there as the witnessing presence. When you listen to that voice, listen to it impartially. Impartially. That is to say, do not judge. Do not judge or condemn what you hear. For doing so would mean that the same voice has come in again through the back door. You will soon realize there is that voice, and here I am listening to it, watching it. This I am realization, this sense of your presence is not a thought, it arises from beyond the mind. So when you listen to a thought, you are aware not only of the thought but also of yourself as the witness of the thought. A new dimension of consciousness has come in. As you listen to the thought, you feel a conscious presence, your deeper self, behind or underneath the thought, as it were. The thought then loses its power over you and quickly subside because you are no longer energizing the mind through identification with it. This is the beginning of the end of involuntary and compulsive thinking. When a thought subsides, you experience a discontinuity in the mental stream, a gap of no mind. At first, the gaps will be shorter, a few seconds perhaps, but gradually they will become longer. When these gaps occur, you feel a certain stillness and peace inside you. This is the beginning of your natural state of felt oneness with the being, which is usually obscured by the mind. With patience, the sense of stillness and the peace will deepen. In fact, there is no end its depth. You will also feel a subtle emanation of joy arising from deep within, the joy of being. In this state of inner conscious connectedness, in this state of inner connectedness, you are much more alert, more awake than in the mind and identified state. You are fully present. It also arises the vibrational frequency of the energy field that gives life to the physical body. As you go more deeply into this realm of no mind, as it is sometimes called in the East, you realize the state of pure consciousness. In that state, you feel your presence on presence with such intensity and such joy that all thinking, all emotions, your physical body, as well as the whole internal world become relatively insignificant in comparison to it. And yet, this is not a selfish but a selfless state. It take you beyond what you previously thought of as yourself. That present is essentially you at the same time inconceivably greater than you. Instead of watching the thinker, you can also create a gap in the mind stream simply by directing the focus of your attention into the now. Just become intensively consciousness of the present moment. This is a deeply satisfying thing to do. In this way, you draw consciousness away from mind actively and create a gap of no mind in which you are highly alert and aware but not thinking. This is the essence of meditation. In your everyday life, you can practice this by thinking any routine actively that normally is only a means to an end and giving it your fullest attention. So it is become an end in itself. For example, every time you walk up and down the stair in your house of place of work, pay close attention to every step, every movement, even your breathing. Be totally present. Or when you wash your hands, pay attention to all the sense perceptions associated with the activity, the sound and feel of the water, the movement of your hands, the scent of the soap, and so on. Or when you get into your car, after you close the door, pause for a few seconds and observe the flow of your breath. Become aware of a silent but powerful sense of presence. There is one certain criterion by which you can measure your success in this practice: the degree of peace that you feel within. The single most vital step on your journey towards enlightenment is this: learn to disidentify from your mind. Every time you create a gap in the stream of mind, the light of your consciousness grows stronger. One day you may catch yourself smiling at the voice in your hand as you would smile at the antics of a child. This means that you no longer take the content of your mind all that seriously, as your sense of self does not depend on it. Enlightenment rising above thought. As you grow up, you form a mental image of who you are based on your personal and cultural condition. We may call this phantom self the ego. It consists of mind activity and can only be kept going through constant thinking. The term ego means different things to different people, but when I use it here, it means a false self created by unconsciousness identification which with the mind. To the ego, the present moment hardly exists. Only past and future are considered important. This total reversal of the truth accounts for the fact that in the ego mode the mind is so dysfunctional. It is always concerned with keeping the past alive, because without it, who you are, who are you? It's constantly projects itself into the future to ensure its continued survival and seek some kind of release or fulfillment there. It's say one day when this, that, or the other happens, I'm going to be okay, happy, at peace. Even when the ego seems to be concerned with the present, it is not the present that it sees. It misperceives it's completely because it look at it through the eyes of the past, or it reduce the present to a mean to the an end that always lies in the mind projected future. Observe your mind and you will see that this is how it's work. The present moment hold the key of liberation, but you cannot find the present moment as long as you are your mind. Enlightenment means rising above thought. In the enlightened state, you still use your thinking mind when needed, but a in a more much focused and effectively way than before. You use it mostly for practical purposes, but you are free of the involuntary internal dialogue, and there is inner stillness. When you do use your mind, and particularly when a creative solution is needed, you oscillate every few minutes or so between thought and stillness, between mind and no mind. No mind is consciousness without thought. Only in that way it is possible to think creatively, because only in that way does thought have any real power. Thought alone, when it is no longer connected with the much vaster realm of connect consciousness, quickly become barren, insane, and destructive. Emotions, the body reaction to your mind mind in the way I use the word is not just thought, it includes your emotion as well. All unconsciousness, mental emotion, reactive patterns. Emotion arises at the place where mind and body meet. It is the body's reaction to your mind, or you might say a reflection of your thought in the body. The more you are identified with your thinking, your likes, dislikes, judgment, and interpretations, which is to say, the less present you are as the watching consciousness, the stronger the emotional energy charge will be, whether you are aware of it or not. If you cannot feel your emotions, if you are cut off from them, you will eventually experience them on a purely physical levels as of physical problems or symptoms. If you have difficulty feeling your emotions, start by focusing attention on the inner energy field of your body. Feel the body from within. This will also put you in touch with your emotions. If you really want to know your mind, the body will always give you a truthful reflection. So, look at the emotion, or rather feel it in your body. If there is an apparent conflict between them, the thought will be the lie, the emotion will be the truth. Not the ultimate truth of who you are, but the relative truth of your state of mind at that time. You may not yet be able to bring your unconsciousness mind activity into awareness as thoughts, but it will always be reflected in the body as an emotions. And of this you can become aware. To watch an emotion in this way, it's basically the same as listening to and watching a thought, which I described earlier. The only difference is that while a thought is in your head, an emotion has a strong physical component, and so it primarily felt in the body. You can you can then allow the emotions to be there without being controlling by it. You no longer are the emotions, you are the watcher, the observing presence. If you practice this, all that is unconsciousness in you will be brought into the light of consciousness. Make it a habit to ask yourself, what's going on inside me at this moment? That question will point you in the right directions. But don't analyze, just watch. Focus your attention within. Feel the energy of the emotion. If there is no emotion present, take your attention more deeply into the inner energy field of your body. It is the doorway into being. Chapter 1 complete.